Hello, and here is another lesson for you on IELTS speaking. So in this lesson, I wanted to just give you some extra information regarding contractions or the use of contractions specifically for IELTS speaking. So contractions, of course, are where we join one or more words together. And we do this in order to be able to say it or write it or just generally communicate it in a quicker way. And of course, there are different contractions that we can use. However, there are some contractions that we really probably want to stay away from during the IELTS speaking test, because of course, this is a reasonably formal, professional environment. And some contractions can come across maybe a little bit rude, and we don't want to upset the IELTS examiner. So first up, a few contractions that we really shouldn't use because they're too informal. They're too much like slang. So I would suggest being very careful or just not using contractions like wanna or lemmy. So wanna would be want to. I want to eat some food. I want to go outside. It's a little bit too informal. I want to play outside. I want to go to the park. That would be something better to use than wanna. So if you were talking about activities and you said, I really want to go out to the park this weekend, that might be a little bit too unacademic, a little bit too informal. And the same with lemmy, which is let me. Of course, in a general day-to-day example, it might be, oh, let me help you with that. Now, that would be okay in a day-to-day piece of speaking, but in our IELTS speaking test, let me would be much better and probably using the right tone for the situation. So just a couple of examples of contractions that maybe we shouldn't use that are too informal for the IELTS test. And of course, pronoun contractions are perfectly okay to use, both in IELTS speaking as well as the other sections of the test. So pronoun contractions like I'm, we're, you're, he's, she's, these aren't slang in use. So we can definitely use these in speaking. And in fact, it would seem strange if we didn't contract these words. So if we said he is, or I am all the time, it would start to sound strange and would actually make us sound like our fluency maybe isn't quite at native level or improving towards the advanced stages. So it could actually mean, if we don't use pronoun contractions, that we may lose marks. So of course, pronoun contractions, perfectly fine in the IELTS speaking test. Okay, just a few advanced contractions that I think we could use. And we're going to be using them with modal verbs. And to begin with, we'll look at should and would. And we're going to look at it in the negative form. Should not have and would not have. So we're thinking probably about past events that maybe we wish we could change. Should not have. I should not have booked that hotel. I would not have booked that hotel if I knew it was so dirty, or whatever the following clause may be. Should not have, would not have. So it's actually 3 full words, but we can really blend it together with an advanced contraction, and definitely worthwhile you practicing using this contraction too. So should not have would become should not have, should not have. Should not have. It's almost instead of a have, it's a have. Should not have. Or you could even go further and of. Should not have. Would not have. Would not have. So we blend it really into almost one word. Should not have. Would not have. Definitely worth practicing using in your speaking, and it really gives you that boost towards fluency. In a similar way, we can use the modal verbs might and ought. So these are the modal verbs, and we'll contract them against an auxiliary verbs in a positive sense this time. So we can have might have, ought have. Now, ought is definitely a slightly advanced piece of language. It's probably less commonly used in informal conversations, but definitely something that you can use in your IELTS speaking test. Ought. I ought have gone to exercise yesterday. But that sounds a little bit strange. It's not how a native speaker would generally say, I ought have gone to exercise yesterday. I ought have trained at the gym yesterday. Ought have would become ought have. Ought have. I ought have trained at the gym yesterday. Ought have. Ought have. And then we can also do the same with might have. Might have. I might have gone if I knew the gym was open. Might have. Might have, ought have. I ought to have really studied a bit harder for this test. I really ought to have gone shopping whilst the mall was open. Just a few more examples for you there. So these are really contractions that are a little bit more advanced, but are still formal in use. So definitely contractions that you can use in your IELTS speaking test. And I believe will also slightly impress the IELTS examiner, which could, of course, help you score extra marks. Okay, if you've got any questions about these contractions, then, of course, as always, please do let me know.